The first time I saw her, she was sitting by the window with a cup of tea, her hair slightly messy, a pen between her fingers, light falling across her face like something sacred. I had just moved into the building a week ago. My apartment was directly across from hers, on the same floor, separated only by the narrow gap between two old city blocks. The kind where sounds echoed, footsteps, laughter, even quiet sighs. She never noticed me watching. Or maybe she did, but chose not to care. Every morning, she'd pull the curtain open exactly at 7:15. Every evening, she'd close it just as the sky began to turn blue-gray. There was something so deliberate in her routine, as if her entire day depended on the rhythm of that light. I started timing my coffee with hers. I told myself it was coincidence. The building was old. Sometimes the power flickered. Sometimes the elevator groaned like an old man sighing. I didn't mind. There was comfort in the noise, in the faint hum of life that existed just beyond my walls. She worked from home. I could see the manuscript stacked on her table, red pens scattered like fallen soldiers. Occasionally, she'd pause and stare out the window, lost somewhere between thought and memory. I took pictures, not of her, at least not directly, just the way sunlight touched her walls, or how the steam from her tea curled upward like smoke from a candle. It wasn't love. Not yet. Just a quiet fascination, the kind that sits in your chest and grows roots before you notice. One afternoon, the rain started without warning. I was standing by my window, camera in hand, when I saw her run to close hers. The wind had pushed it open. Her curtains danced wildly. She laughed, not the practiced, polite kind, but something unguarded, real. And for the first time in months, I smiled without meaning to. That night, the building lost power. The city went dark, and only the faint glow of the sky remained. I stepped out into the corridor, phone in hand, when her door opened too. She was holding a candle, her hair falling loose over her shoulder. "Oh," she said softly, as if she hadn't expected anyone. I raised my hand awkwardly. Seems we're both stuck in the dark. She smiled. "It happens a lot here. You get used to it." I don't remember what else we said, just that the hallway smelled like rain and candle wax, and her voice sounded like something that could make a person stay. When the lights flickered back, she turned to go. "Good night," she said, and her eyes lingered on me for a second too long. That was the first time it felt like something had shifted quietly without asking permission. And just like that, the light through her window became the most familiar part of my day. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Maybe it was the faint hum of the city waking up, or maybe it was just her. Her window was open again. Steam rose from her cup of tea, curling gently into the cool air. I almost expected her to glance up, to notice me across the narrow gap between our lives. But she didn't. She was lost in her world, pen moving slowly across a page, brows slightly furrowed. She looked like someone who'd forgotten how to hurry. For the next few days, we didn't speak again. We just existed within each other's view, like two chapters in different books sharing the same shelf. Then came Thursday. The elevator had stopped again, and I was carrying groceries up the stairs. Halfway up, I heard footsteps behind me. A soft voice said, "You took the last bag of coffee at the store." I turned around. It was her, wearing a gray sweater, hair tied up, eyes amused. "I did." I blinked, surprised. She held up her empty cup. "You did. I was standing right behind you, but you looked too focused to notice." For a moment, I didn't know what to say. The idea that she'd seen me, in that dull grocery store light, oblivious, felt strangely intimate. "I owe you a coffee, then," I said, half smiling. She tilted her head, that faint, tired smile returning. "You can owe me one, sure, though I'm not sure how you'll deliver it across the street." That made both of us laugh softly. It was the first real sound between us, something alive, not just the echo of daily routine. Later that evening, I stood by my window again. Her lights were off, except for a faint glow from her desk lamp. She was editing something, red pen in hand, eyes fixed. I wanted to tell her I'd made an extra cup of coffee. I wanted to tell her it was the same brand she couldn't find. But I didn't. I just placed my mug near the window, as if that meant anything. The next morning, I found a small note taped to my door. Thanks for the coffee. 43B. No name, just an apartment number. Mine was 43A. That tiny scrap of paper, just 6 words, felt heavier than most conversations I'd had all year. After that, little things started to happen. She'd wave when our windows caught each other's view. Sometimes I'd leave her favorite tea brand by her door. Once, she slid a book under mine, a collection of essays about solitude and art. Inside, one line was underlined, "To be seen without being interrupted. That is rare." I don't know if it was meant for me, but it stayed. One evening, the rain came again, hard, relentless. I stood by my window, camera in hand. She was by hers, curtain half open, hair undone. For the first time, our eyes met directly, openly. No smile, no shyness. Just that quiet recognition that something fragile had begun. I lifted my mug slightly, a silent greeting. She raised hers back, lips curving into a soft grin. No words, just 2 people separated by air, connected by everything else. That night, as I lay awake, I realized something simple and terrifying. This wasn't curiosity anymore. It was beginning to happen on a Sunday. The rain had stopped, but the streets were still breathing in the smell of it. Wet stone, sea salt, and something softer, something like relief. I had been editing photos all morning when I heard a knock on the door. 3 light taps. Hesitant. When I opened it, she was standing there, holding a small jar of coffee beans. "I thought I'd return the favor," she said. "Fair trade for the one you gave me." Her voice was calm, but her hands gave her away, one thumb rubbing the edge of the jar again and again. I stepped aside. "You want to come in?" She hesitated, then nodded. Her eyes moved across my apartment, like someone walking through a half-remembered dream. Boros. A couch with a throw blanket. The window, open to the sound of the sea. "It's quiet here," she said finally. I smiled. "That's the point." She set the jar on the counter, glancing toward my camera equipment. "You take pictures of the sea?" "Mostly," I said. "Sometimes people, but the sea's easier to read." She let out a quiet laugh, not amused, more understanding. "People are harder," she said. "They change shape when you look at them too long." We ended up sitting by the window. She wrapped her hands around the mug I made her, black coffee, no sugar. It was strange how easily silence found comfort between us. Outside, gulls drifted low over the waves, the sound of their wings mixing with the slow, rhythmic pull of the tide. Her gaze followed them. "When I was younger, I thought I'd leave this town," she murmured. "Now I'm not sure if I stayed, or just stopped." There was something in her tone, not regret, exactly, more like surrender. I wanted to ask what she meant, but she looked so still, so far away in that moment, that interrupting felt wrong. Instead, I said softly, "Sometimes staying is braver." She turned to me, eyes tired but kind. "You really think that?" "I think leaving's easy, but staying, that takes something else." She smiled, the kind that barely lifts the corners of her mouth but fills the air around it. "Maybe," she said, and took another sip of coffee. For the next hour, we just talked. Nothing dramatic, just small truths. She told me she used to teach art before she started working from home, that her husband was gone, that her son was studying abroad. And I told her about my job, my restlessness, the photos that never quite captured what I felt. At one point, she looked at one of the pictures I'd taken, the reflection of the ocean on glass. "You see things gently," she said. I didn't know what that meant, but it stayed with me. When she finally stood to leave, the light had begun to change, that soft gold before evening. She paused by the door, hand resting lightly on the frame. "I like the quiet here," she said. "You can borrow at any time," I said. Her smile was faint, but real. Careful with promises like that. And then she was gone, down the hallway, footsteps fading. I sat there for a long time after, coffee growing cold beside me. Something about her presence had rearranged the air. It wasn't loud. It wasn't even clear. It was just there. That night, when her window lit up across the street, I caught myself smiling without reason. And when I looked away, it felt like leaving a room too soon. I didn't see her for 3 days. At first, I told myself it didn't matter. People get busy. Life fills the space between moments. But by the fourth evening, when her window stayed dark again, I realized how much silence can weigh. It wasn't just her absence, it was the absence of routine. No quiet smiles from the balcony, no gentle wave when we crossed the street, no excuse to linger by the Sea Cafe, where she sometimes sat reading. I try not to look for her, but it became a habit anyway. I'd glance at her window before making coffee, before heading out, before trying to sleep. By the fifth night, the town felt lonelier than usual. The ocean was restless, hitting the rocks with a kind of impatience I could almost understand. Then, late that evening, a soft knock. Familiar. Hesitant. I opened the door. She was there, hair a little damp from drizzle, sweater sleeves pushed up, eyes slightly tired. "Sorry," she said. "I should have called. I just walked." Her voice was steady, but her breathing wasn't. "You okay?" I asked. She nodded, then shook her head. "Some days I just drift. Don't know where to go, so I end up walking." I stepped aside. "You can sit if you want." She walked in quietly, like someone entering a memory instead of a room. She didn't say much. Just sat on the couch, arms folded loosely, gaze fixed on nothing. The air between us was still, but not empty. I didn't ask questions. She didn't offer answers. That was how it worked between us. Truth came in fragments, never full confessions. After a while, she said, almost to herself, "You ever feel like you're living someone else's life? Like you took a wrong turn years ago and didn't notice until it was too late?" I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I poured her tea, set it down gently beside her. She smiled at that, barely, but her fingers trembled slightly when she picked it up. "Maybe it's not too late," I said. Her eyes flicked to mine, searching. "You really believe that?" "I have to. Otherwise, what's the point?" For a moment, it felt like the room exhaled. Something unspoken passed between us, soft, weightless, and dangerous. When she left that night, the air smelled faintly of rain and tea leaves. She didn't look back when she closed the door. But when I looked out the window later, her light was on again. The next morning, I found a note slipped under my door. "Thank you for the quiet." That was all. I kept that note pinned above my desk for days, tracing the curve of her handwriting whenever I got lost in thought. It felt like the kind of thing people leave behind when they're trying to say something without saying it. Then she started appearing again, by the cafe window, by the beach path, sometimes outside her building just before sunset. Always the same faint smile. Always the same space between us. But something had changed. Her eyes lingered longer now. And when she laughed, it felt less like politeness, more like surrender. Once, she caught me staring and said softly, "Careful. You look at people like they matter." I want to tell her she did, but I didn't. Instead, I smiled and looked away. That evening, I found myself standing outside her building, looking up at her balcony. She was there, arms resting on the railing, the sea's reflection flickering across her face. I lifted a hand in a half wave. She didn't wave back, but she didn't move either. Just stood there, watching. And for a moment, the world held still. The gulls stopped calling, the sea stopped moving, and it felt like everything was waiting for one of us to do something neither of us could. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her by the railing, the wind moving through her hair, her face lit by something I couldn't name. It wasn't love yet. Not exactly. It was the edge of it, the ache that comes before you let yourself fall. Tea started with distance again. Not the kind you measure in miles, but in pauses. The next week, she wasn't around. No light in her window. No footsteps in the hallway. No quiet knock at my door. It shouldn't have hurt, but it did. There's a strange kind of ache that comes when you start expecting someone you never planned to need. On Thursday, I saw her by the pier. She was talking to someone, a man, maybe her age, maybe older. He laughed. She smiled. That was all. But the smile wasn't the one I knew. It was the polite kind, the one people wear when they want to look fine. Still, something in me twisted. Not jealousy exactly. More like fear, the fear of being temporary. Later that evening, when I passed her building, her window was open again, light spilling out like a quiet invitation. I should have kept walking, but I didn't. I called up softly, "You okay?" She looked down, startled at first, then smiled faintly. "You always ask that," she said. "I never know what else to say. That's what makes it kind." A pause. Then, "Come up." Her apartment smelled like lavender and rain. There were paintings leaned against the wall, half-finished, brushes drying in a glass jar. She'd been painting again. That made me smile. "You paint?" "I used to," she said, "before everything got quiet." I nodded. "Quiet can be good. Not this kind." Her voice trembled slightly, like a string about to snap. Then softer. "He came by today. My husband." The words sank like stones. I tried to look calm, but something behind my ribs cracked open. "I thought you were separated." "Yes." She rubbed at her wrist, eyes avoiding mine. "But he wanted to talk. Closure, maybe, or habit." "And did you?" "Talk." "No. Get closure." She laughed once, low and tired. "I don't think people like us get that luxury." The silence that followed was heavy, not awkward, not angry, just full. Like both of us were standing at the edge of something we couldn't name. I stepped closer without meaning to. The room smelled like coffee and turpentine and salt air. Her eyes met mine, steady, unsure, searching. It was one of those moments that feel suspended in time, fragile and dangerous. As she stepped back just an inch, that inch felt infinite. "You should go," she whispered. "I didn't mean, I know." Her tone was soft, but final. I nodded, throat dry. "Okay." She followed me to the door, hands in her pockets. When I turned back, she wasn't looking at me. She was looking at the floor. "Good night," I said. She murmured something I couldn't hear. When the door clicked shut, it echoed like something breaking quietly inside both of us. Outside, the street was wet from fresh rain. The sea wind carried her scent for a moment, lavender, coffee, loss, and then it was gone. That night, I didn't turn on my lights. I just sat in the dark, facing the glow of her window across the street. Except it stayed dark. For the first time, I understood what silence could really mean. Not peace, but absence. Not calm, but distance. Days passed like that. I kept trying not to wait, but waiting anyway. Sometimes I thought about knocking on her door again. Sometimes I stood in the hallway, hand raised halfway, before walking away. Then one morning, I found something outside my door. A small envelope, unaddressed. Inside was a single photograph. Her balcony, taken from my window, with morning light falling across it. On the back, a line written in her hand, "Don't wait. Just see me when you see me." I stared at it for a long time. The light through my blinds looked almost like hers, soft, tired, hopeful. And that was when I realized this wasn't an ending. Not yet. Just another pause. She was gone for almost 3 weeks. In a town that small, absence becomes rumor. The sea doesn't forget, though. It just keeps moving, pretending not to notice what's missing. I told myself I'd stopped looking for her. But every morning, my eyes went straight to that window, the one that used to hold a soft, golden square of light. Now it was blank, cold. Then one evening, just before sunset, I saw it again. That same warm light spilling through her curtains. My heart didn't race, it just steadied, like everything around me fell into place again. I didn't go over that night. I just stood at my window, watching shadows move across hers. It was enough to know she was there, alive, quiet, still part of this world. The next morning, I found her sitting on the beach, wrapped in a faded gray shawl, hair tied, loose against the wind. I almost didn't go to her, afraid I'd disturb whatever peace she'd built in the distance between us. But then she looked up and smiled, small and tired and real. And that was all it took. "Hey," I said. "Hey," she echoed, her voice soft, warmed by salt air. For a while, neither of us said anything. The sea spoke for us, the waves folding and unfolding with the slow rhythm of something ancient and forgiving. Finally, I asked, "You went somewhere?" She nodded. "To my sister's place. Up north." "You okay?" "I am now." Her gaze stayed on the horizon. I just needed to remember what quiet felt like, without the ache. There was no accusation in her tone, no blame. But something about her words stung anyway, because I knew I'd been part of that ache, maybe not the cause, but the reason it lingered. We sat there until the tide began to reach for our feet. Then she turned to me, pulling her shawl tighter. You kept your distance, she said. I didn't want to make it harder. You didn't. Pause. You just made it real. Her eyes were soft but steady. There was no sadness in them this time, just acceptance. Like she'd finally made peace with what we were and what we weren't. She stood, brushing sand from her jeans. I started painting again, she said. That's good. Maybe. It's all the same view, though. The sea, the light, the window, she smiled faintly. Guess I paint what stays. That stayed with me. The simplicity of it. The quiet truth that sometimes love doesn't ask to be claimed, only remembered. We began walking back together. Her steps were slow, unhurried. At one point, her hand brushed mine. Barely a touch, but it sent a shiver through the kind of silence words would only ruin. When we reached her building, she stopped. Want to come up? The question hung between us, fragile as glass. I nodded. Her apartment hadn't changed much, except for one thing. A canvas stood by the window, and on it, unfinished, was a painting of that same view from her balcony. The ocean, the light, and a faint silhouette in the reflection of a window. It looked like me. I felt something shift inside. Quiet, deep, irreversible. You painted that? She smiled. It painted itself. She turned toward me, eyes shimmering in the soft light. I miss this, she whispered. What? The quiet that makes sense. And before I could say anything, she reached out, her hand brushing against my cheek, a touch so light it almost wasn't there. But it was enough. Enough to break the distance. Enough to say everything we'd never dared to. Then, just as slowly, she pulled away. The air between us trembled. I could have kissed her. I wanted to, but she just said softly, don't. And somehow I understood. This was her way of keeping it from breaking. The moment, the peace, the fragile truth we'd built. As I turned to leave, she said quietly, you know, the way light falls through your window, it's the same as mine. I smiled without looking back. Maybe that's why it never really feels dark. Outside, the air smelled like rain again. And for the first time, the silence didn't ache. It just felt full. There's a stillness that comes after something ends. Not silence, exactly. More like the world holding its breath. She and I never said goodbye. We didn't need to. Some things fade so gently you don't realize they've gone until you reach for them and find air. For weeks, I saw her light at night. Soft gold, steady. It felt like a heartbeat across the street. Then one morning, it wasn't there anymore. No movement, no shadow. Just the pale reflection of my own window staring back. Her landlord told me she'd left suddenly. Something about a gallery, he said, scratching his head. City somewhere. Didn't say much else. He handed me her mail by mistake once. The sender's address was marked. Crescent Gallery, New Harbor. I never opened it. It wasn't mine to read. Days turned to weeks. The sea stayed the same. The gulls still circled, calling over empty rooftops. But everything felt slower now, like the town was missing a sound only I remembered. Sometimes when the evening light slants just right, I still see her sitting by the window, brush in hand, head tilted slightly. Maybe it's memory. Maybe it's wishful thinking. Either way, I don't look away. I tried painting once after she left. Didn't know what I was doing. Just started sketching the sea, the horizon, the faint shape of a window that never really stopped glowing. It came out uneven, but real. Maybe that's what love is. Something imperfect that still feels alive long after it's gone. One night, I found a small envelope under my door. No name, no return address. Inside, a postcard. It was one of her paintings, the same window view, but brighter, washed in morning light. On the back, she'd written, "Some places never leave you. Thank you for reminding me what quiet feels like." That was all. No signature, no promises. But her handwriting was the same, neat, unhurried, full of calm I could almost hear. I kept that postcard by my bedside. Still do. It reminds me that some people don't need to stay to leave something behind. Sometimes their absence becomes the light itself, the kind that lingers in corners, the kind that never burns out. The town went on. New tenants moved into her flat. Their laughter echoed where her silence used to live. And yet, every dusk, I still glance at that window, half expecting to see her silhouette again, outlined against the fading sky. I imagine her somewhere far from here, maybe near another sea, maybe by another window, still painting the way the light falls when no one's watching, still breathing in the same quiet she once gave me. And I like to think, when the wind carries the salt smell inland, she feels it too, like a soft, invisible reminder that not all endings are sad. Some just settle, gentle and sure, into the places we can't forget. Because even now, when the sun slips past my curtain, it lands on the same spot where her shadow used to rest. And the room feels warmer for it. Maybe she was never meant to stay. Maybe she was meant to show me that peace doesn't always come from holding on. Sometimes it comes from learning how to let the light go.